Welcome back to Smite Guides, and today we're talking about Amaterasu after playing her in every single lane in the world of Smite Conquest. I'm going to start off by going over her abilities, we'll move into her roles and where she belongs, and then finish off with builds. First, we'll start talking about her passive. Her passive basically just allows you to find the weakness of whoever you're hitting, enemy-wise. It can be minions, gods, it doesn't matter. As long as you land 3 basics on them, they get this little aura around them, allows you to do 10% increased damage to that target and anybody within that aura as well. You can have 3 of those stacked at one time, so I could have it on this Odin bot, and then I can also have it on the Odin bot that's over here, and you can have 3 of those running at one time, whereas if you're able to get 4, which most cases you wouldn't be able to get all 4 off anyway, the first one would disappear, and then you would have just the 3 running prior. So that's pretty much that. It is basically Spear of the Magus, but on Amaterasu as a buff. It increases all sources of damage up by 10% to that specific person and anybody within that aura as well. Her number 1 is a coin that she flips over, giving her either benevolence or valor. Right now she has valor on her, which increasing her power, and then if she flips that over, she gets increased movement speed. It also heals her for a short period of time. It's not a notable amount of healing. It's not enough to keep you on lane. Maybe in the late game you get about 200 health back. It could maybe turn the difference of you being able to re-enter a fight or stick around a little bit longer, but really it's not notable. It has a low cooldown, so you can keep spamming it. So I guess maybe you could get back in and not have to back, so that helps with the 1. And then the 2 is a line attack for Amaterasu that helps her kind of with her clear, and maybe if she's able to stick to someone and do a lot of damage, it could finish someone off or give you a nice chunk in order to do a little bit more damage in an engagement. So there's that. It takes 5 seconds to charge unless you're hitting someone, and then if you are hitting someone, it increases the charge for you, and then it'll fire off. It does less damage if you fire it off early. You can activate it again by pressing the same button, but it does notably less damage if you are to fire it off earlier. The entire time that it's charging, she gets increased mitigation, so it kind of helps her survive. If you're trying to get out of combat, you can activate that, do your dash, and also get your healing so you can get out of combat pretty easy. Her dash is pretty quick and pretty long. It fires out a silence in front of her. She flashes off light and there's silence for 1 second. Unfortunately, that is not a long amount of time. So that 1 second cooldown tends to be, or 1 second silence is really not that great. It doesn't really help. By the time you're on top of them, it's pretty much going away, so they have their abilities anyway, so I don't even know why they put that in her kit. I don't know if they just wanted to throw something extra on it, but it's pretty much useless. It's not going to be something you notice that makes the difference between being able to kill someone or not. Maybe if they have no health whatsoever and you need to be able to dash on them so they don't use their dash, and that's enough damage with the dash to kill them, I'm not sure, but it's not very a notable silence. For her ultimate, it's very clunky. Her ultimate is basically just a 3 burst attack where she hits down on the ground 3 times in a row, doing more damage if they're hit consecutively with it, also slowing them by 20%, and then doing a stun at the end. So it's, again, very clunky. They tried to increase her movement with it, but because every time she hits, she's just stopped for a second, it doesn't really help. They're able to kind of get out of it. If they have a dash, they're going to get away. So it doesn't really lock it down. She is CC during it, so she could technically get out of CCs if she uses it. So there's that. So she's okay. She's got a good kit to get out of things. She's got a good kit to escape and survive, but she doesn't have a good kit to do a lot of damage or a good kit to lock people down, really, unless they hit the stun on the 3rd ultimate or this 1 second silence makes the difference in a battle. But overall, her kit is clunky and it doesn't really work very well, and I think, and just in my personal opinion, her kit needs to be reworked. I feel like there's gods that do what she does just a lot better. I think Mulan is a better version of her. She's an attack speed based god. Really, when you think about it, building her ability based damage really isn't that great. So, I mean, I just feel like Mulan is just the amped up version of Amaterasu. So we'll get into what a full burst of her attack looks like, or her abilities, and then we'll go into where she belongs at role wise. So you would activate probably the power boost, and then you'd go into your stun and then dash into combat, or not your stun, your mirror, and then that would do a bit of a chunk, and then hopefully you can finish them off. Well, he's gonna beat me up until I walk out of here, so we'll allow him to do that. But she doesn't do a whole lot of damage. I've noticed just playing her over the 5 games, I didn't have a whole lot of fun. Even if this is probably the best build that I currently have on her that I was able to find that works out. At least she can survive and she still does a bit of damage. But just overall, I just didn't find her to be excessively good at anything or excessively good anywhere. So we'll get into roles, and we'll first talk about the worst one, which is going to be definitely the mid lane. By far, up to this point, the worst mid lane experience I've ever had. I do not enjoy trying to play Amaterasu in the mid lane. I was able to get a good game uploaded for you guys in the mid lane with Amaterasu, but that was just because we had an amazing team and we got very lucky. Every other 15 to 20 games before that, I got slaughtered and absolutely hated my life during it. Her clear is not good enough to keep on lane with a mage. And even though she has the movement to be able to rotate through the jungle and help people out, she's so stuck trying to clear her lane out that entire time that a mage with no dash and no movement at all is going to be rotating more than you, which is unbelievable. I built so many different ways on her with transcendence and different ability based power items to try to make it to where you can clear out with hers too, in order to clear wave just as quick as them. Building golden blade in order to do damage with your basics across all of the minions in order to clear with them. But every time you get out cleared and every time you get poked and you take more damage than the mage is going to take, and if you try to stick to them, you're not going to do enough damage. You're in the middle of the map, you're always getting pressured, you're always falling behind, you're not going to stay on par with the mid laner, and she just does not do well there. I don't think there's any circumstance where I'd ever have her in the mid lane. And I don't think there was ever a circumstance where I had her in the mid lane and I was like, hey, I could find a way to make this work. It didn't. The only way we got a good game was because everyone helped us out, and that was it. And then the next one's probably going to be jungle. Jungle is not a great place for her either. She does have a kit where she can lock people down, but it's a clunky kit. She has her 1 second silence, which maybe she enters into combat with, and that's long enough to be able to lock someone down and kill them before they're able to run away. But in most cases it's not. And then she has her ultimate, which I guess if she was able to get on top of someone and start using her ultimate, but if they have any type of dash, they're getting away. Any type of leap, they're getting away. If they have any type of movement speed, they're getting away from you. So I don't really like her ultimate. It takes forever to land the full thing, and you know, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and you're at the third hit's the only one that really matters because you're trying to get the stun off, and by the third hit they've realized you're there and they're probably dashing out if they have it. So she doesn't really work in the jungle. She's definitely getting out-farmed by the opposing jungle. She's not moving as quickly through the jungle as the opposing. She might be able to, but she's going to be stuck farming a lot longer than any other jungle will. So maybe until the late game, then maybe she can stay up to farm, but you're not going to make it to the late game. So I just feel like that doesn't work too well. She has some survivability that the jungle may not have if you build a tankier build on her, like something like what's built here. But that doesn't really work because then you're really not clearing anything. So jungle does not work very well for her. We'll go into carry. Carry is, I guess, okay for her. You're building the same build that, I mean, you could build something like a tanky build to maybe try to survive in brawls against the hunter a little bit more, but most likely you're going to build something very similar to what hunters build anyway, but they do it better. So you're getting out cleared again. You're definitely getting outboxed by the hunter. You have a little bit more health, but they're just going to peg you away, especially in the late game. They're going to out-farm you. They're probably going to steal all the farm in your jungle. You're going to be fighting for your purple buff the entire game. It's just not good. Maybe in the late game you do enough damage to matter, but probably not. By the time you group up the rest of your team, the other hunter's doing more damage than you, they're providing more than you. It's just not okay, so I don't feel like she belongs there. And again, there's warriors that you can take into the carry lane that I feel like do a lot better than she does. And the biggest thing is you're going to be out cleared again on lane, and you're going to be fighting for your lane and fighting for minions and taking damage the whole time and having to back more often. It's just not okay. So definitely not the carry lane. Now getting into the two roles that she kind of does good is the support lane. That's going to be the second one. Support lane, she does okay. You can build her full tank, you can build her auras, and then maybe she has, you know, some purpose. She can be the front man. She can lock people down with her ultimate if she's able to get it off in a group fight. Where she becomes notably better is towards the late game, where then at least she can be right there in the front and she can enter fights with the silences and maybe, you know, silence a whole team where it becomes useful for 1 second. Being able to enter into a fight where they can't do anything for that first initial burst, and then being able to stun multiple people in group fights with her ult if they're not having the movement speed or they're too busy focusing on other people, so then it becomes kind of useful. So there's the support, and then she also has in group fights the buff where she increases the damage to people that she's hitting, so you have that. So that kind of where she starts to become viable, where her buffs start to work for the people that you're around, and you're playing a role where you're just trying to just be that front man. You're trying to stop people from, chasing. You're trying to peel, which you can use with your silences and your ultimate in order to get people off of your people. You can use your kit to get people onto their people. So she kind of works there. Definitely people that do it a lot better than her. So I'm not saying, hey, play support Amaterasu, but if you're gonna play Amaterasu, support lane is at least somewhere where she feels like she fits. The top lane is definitely gonna be solo. This is where she fits the best. This is where at least she feels like she's okay. She can definitely brawl with warriors. She can clear just as well as most warriors. Warriors aren't meant to be, clearing lane out very quickly anyway. It's more of just a brawl fest. Whoever clears the lane just slightly faster gets to brawl, and I feel like she clears fine on par with most solo laners, unless you go into a full power mage, and then maybe at that point she becomes a little bit useless, because then at that point you're just mid lane on the left side of the field or right side, wherever you're at. So it's just kind of weird, but at least on the solo lane she feels like she's at home. She does enough damage to be able to brawl. If you build something like a Death's Embrace, she has enough sustain to be able to fight up against another melee warrior. So there's where she sits. At least then she comes into, you build her tanky. This is definitely my solo build here. This is something that you could use, and you'd get the farm that you need, and you can brawl with the warrior, and you can kind of snowball out of the solo lane, and then you're coming into the team at the end of the game and being able to gank in the mid game if necessary as well, into the mid lane and into the jungle. Taking Pyromancer pretty quickly with her is nice. She does a lot more damage than most warriors are going to do with her basics, other than your Mulans and stuff like that. So she's helpful in that side of the jungle. But the most notable thing is when she comes out of solo lane, she's going to be a bit higher of a level if played correctly and farmed correctly than most people. When she comes into the group fights, she's going to be tankier, and she's going to be coming into a full built guardian as well, so she's a good frontliner, and she still does notable amount of damage. So that's where she shines, is in the solo lane, though I'm not saying it's a very big shine if you are going to play her in the solo lane. So that goes into that. So going into her builds, this is the build that I currently have on her that is for the solo lane, though you can build it anywhere. There's so many different ways that you can try to make her work. There's 2 different builds that I feel like work as well as they can on Amaterasu, and then there's a couple other builds that you can go into that are kind of weird builds that I feel like don't work too well on her. So this is the main build. I'd probably go definitely in the solo lane. You could probably make this work in other lanes. You could make this work maybe in a support game if you want to be a little bit more damage forward. But most notably, you're probably going to go full tank and probably just provide auras for everyone around you, because you can still get the help from Shoguns. But this build specifically with Death's Embrace gives you sustain off your basic attacks, which is good. Berserker's Shield gives you increased attack speed and some protections. Most of the time you're going into a warrior, so this gives you the physical you need. You can substitute out Gladiator's Shield first, but I'd probably build Berserker's first just to get the additional attack speed on her. This helps you get more health back as you're fighting with Death's Embrace, and then go into Gladiators next, because most of the time on the solo lane, unless they're playing like a mid mage or a jungle mage, where you're going to see a lot of magical coming over to your laning ganks, double physical is probably pretty good in the early to mid game, and then you'll go into Shoguns for your magical, and then end game you'll go into Talisman. Shogun will give you that additional attack speed as well. Quisai is a good item to build on her. This will also give you your magical and some cooldowns, so that's nice. This gets you to about 10% cooldowns total on her, or actually, yeah, it's 20% total on her if you build both of these items. So you're not maxing out her cooldowns, but her abilities really aren't that great anyway, so it's not really like you need her abilities to be on low cooldowns. You're mainly focusing on her basic attacks for most of her damage. So these are 2 good items to build on her. Quisai will give you more fighting power towards the end game, especially with people with high health, especially versus the warrior that you're fighting if they don't go full damage. Definitely the guardian in the late game, since you're going to be that front man, peeling off of, trying to stop their guardian from peeling your people, so melting him so that he has to disengage. So that's nice. And then Talisman's really nice on her because it gives her attack speed if you get kills or assists. It gives her the buffer for movement speed and attack speed, helping you stick to people, gives you a huge health pool, and also helps you with magical protection. So this would be my solo build for her. Probably one of the items you don't see built a lot is Talisman, but it works really well on Amaterasu. The other build is going to stick to Death's Embrace. You're going to come off of all of these protections items, and you're going to go full damage with her, and it's basically just the Hunter's build. In the beginning, you probably build something like Golden Blade to help you with clear, and then you're going to go into your full, probably crit build, where you're going to build Shadow Steel. You can either go Rage if you feel like you're going to get a lot of kills if you're doing really well and you can stack that up. If not, you're going to go Deathbringer. Deathbringer is really nice. I like getting that additional crit. You can go Wind Demon, but I feel like Deathbringer just hits a lot harder, gives you a little bit more power, which is nice. And then I'd probably build Malicious Deathbringer just because I feel like the poison's not too notable on her. And then Quisai, and probably go into Executioner. And then, you know, if you wanted to, you could do the full build Executioner instead of the full build Deathbringer, just because, again, cooldowns aren't that important for her. So getting maybe the upgraded Executioner is better off. So something along these lines, you could build something like a Crusher, but that goes into the weird build that I was going to talk about, which is basically just an ability build, which is something that I mainly tried out on mid lane to try to make her abilities do more damage. But it doesn't really work that well, and that's going into like your typical ability-based warrior build, which is Bluestone, heading into all of your transcendence and ability-based items that you typically build, going into Jotuns, probably, you know, after that going into Jotun's Vigor, and then heading down the Jotun's tree, where you build things like Crusher for the tick damage, for your abilities to make them do a little bit more, Brawler's Beat Stick for reduced healing. Definitely probably not Titan's Bane. You could build something like Heartseeker, would be a good final item for this, or you could substitute Quisai in there if you wanted a little bit more attack speed, since Crusher helps with the attack speed as well. But this is kind of like a weird build that works, but not really, because your early game's terrible, because you're a basic attack god and your abilities don't do much anyway, so it's like, it's eh. So I wouldn't really build this often, though it is an idea you can keep in the back of your mind if you're trying to play with something. The first two builds are mainly what I would build on her. And then for support, it's very simple. It's just typically what I'd build on a support character, as always. The main meta for support characters, I would definitely build Animosity on her, just because, again, most gods that I'm building in support that have basic attack damage that's pretty high, I go Benevolence into Animosity, so she gets the increased basic attacks on her health. And then I go into all health based auras, starting with Gauntlet. Gauntlet is really nice to have. It's obviously a busted item right now and everyone builds it, but it gives you increased health as well as giving protections to your team as well as yourself. And then I'd go into your main typical auras, stuff like Shogun's to help her with attack speed, as well as everyone around you with attack speed, helping with sovereignty for physical protections. Depending on if it's a heavy person doing the most damage, either building Contagion or Pestilence would be nice. And then also building maybe Emperor's Armor if you build Pestilence for the additional health, as well as going into buffs and debuffs on towers is nice to have if you're playing with a very aggressive team or playing against a very aggressive team. Having that, a Heartward Amulet's nice. I'm a big fan of Heartward Amulet. Amulet of the Stronghold allows you to go into additional physical armor, so if you wanted to go Contagion or you wanted to go Emperor's Armor, you could, and just something along these lines here. You're not focusing too much on her damage, you're mainly focusing on her being a front man, though Animosity, if getting to level 20, is going to make her have a huge power spike in her basics, so she can dish out a nice amount of damage, especially paired with Shogun's, which gives her that bit of attack speed that she would need. You could sub a damage item in here, but I probably wouldn't. I would stick to something like this. So that goes over all the builds for Amaterasu. This guide is, you know, relatively short, mainly just because I feel like Amaterasu isn't the greatest. I feel like she's not played a lot right now just because she doesn't do too well. There are some people that like her and some people that make her kit, as clunky as it may be, work very well. I'm just not that person. I don't really do well with her, so maybe not the best person to follow a guide on for her. And maybe there's some insight that you guys have where you can, you know, leave in the comments and let me know what I'm doing wrong with her, and maybe a way I can play her better. But in general, I just feel like she's in a weird spot and probably needs a bit of a tweak to her kit in order to make her a little bit more a little bit better in her current situation than she is. So that is Amaterasu. I hope you guys enjoyed, and other than that, if you guys are enjoying the content so far, a subscribe lets me know that you're going to come back, which lets me know in turn that I'm doing well on my content. If for any reason you feel like there's anything I can be doing better, leave it down in the comments. I do like criticism. It lets me know that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm doing something good. Leaving a like on specific videos also allows me to know that I'm doing well. So that is our guides, and I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been Cry.